The next fly tying video in my trout fly series is a black gnat. This is kind of our first look at a bit of entomology, and the term gnat can be a little bit confusing because gnat refers to a wide range of little flies in your Dipterid order. So Dipterid is essentially two-winged flies. So when it's two-winged and small, it's pretty much going to be labelled up as a gnat. So a little bit confusing because this is actually aimed at a Bibio Johannis, which is one of your more common species of gnats in the UK. So a Bibio Johannis is, it's a gnat by all intents and purposes, and that could also go all the way down into your little 1 mil biting midges, for example. So it's just it's nothing specific. It's just a broad term that's used for small flies in the Dipterid order. Where it gets a little bit confusing is when you kind of peel the back a little bit. This is a Bibio Johannis, which essentially is a member of the family Bibinidae, and that also includes your heatherflies and your hawthorns. So it kind of gets a little bit murky there, although the waters kind of get a little bit muddied. But what you need to remember, if it's two-winged, small little fly, it's more than likely going to be put down as a gnat. Now, there's no real life cycle there to be concerned with. At some point, the adult gets blown onto the water, and it becomes a free offering for trout that we can then put an artificial fly into the mix and hopefully catch a trout with it. So that is a black gnat or Bibio Johannis. I hope you like the pattern, and let's go on the fly tying. In the vise is a debarbed size 16 dry fly hook, and the thread I'm using is Semperfi Classic Wax 12/0 in black. When I start this pattern, I like to start it from pretty much behind the hook eye, and I'll work my thread wraps down to around about halfway down the shank. I'm going to keep the tag section there, so I'm not going to get rid of that tag section. I'm going to work the thread back up to pretty much halfway between that little thread base I've just put in. I get a bit of wax into the thread. For the wing slips, I'm using mallard primaries. Once I've got my wing slips ready, I've got them facing back to back. I've got them back to back facing opposing directions. I'm going to measure these out to around about the length of the hook shank. Cast them in with a pinch loop. A couple of extra turns. Straighten them out if you need to. A few more turns just to make sure everything's caught in nicely. Quick little snip. Pull the wings back. Create a little thread down underneath. I'll just take my dubbing needle. And just simply prise them out. Prise them apart. And I'll take my thread, do loose wraps between, and put a bit of tension and tighten. Loose wrap again, and put in a little bit of tension and tighten. Do that a couple of times. Just pulling those wings apart and into position where I want them. Right, once I'm happy with that, I'll just work the thread back down to where the barb would be before I'd mash it up in the vise. Now there's lots of bits, there's lots of different types of dubbing that you could use, lots of materials for the bodies you could use fuzz and tail, you could use strip quills. In this I'm using some black superfine dubbing. I'm going to put on a very, very light noodle. So it's quite a sparse little fly. If I need to add in just a tiny bit more, I can do. You might notice I'm actually using saliva to adhere this to the thread instead of wax. Just my preference when I'm tying this type of dubbing. Okay, I'm going to take this tag section, just trim it down so it's a little bit easier to work with. I'm going to take my dubbing needle, my hackle pliers, give it a quick spin just to tighten that thread up. And I'm going to add in just a little quick bit of counter ribbing with the thread. Start that again because my hackle pliers decided to let go. Entirely optional that really, it's just I like to build in that little bit of extra durability to it. And not fast if there's a little bit of unevenness to the body, as long as there's that taper. That's just the type of dubbing that you're going to struggle to get a perfectly smooth body with it. From there, a bit more wax into my thread. The hackle, I'm using a genetic coxsaddle, and that's dyed black. This is actually a Whiting's. I'm going to work the thread to where I want it, cast that in. And just simply cast those in so it's sticking nice and upright. And just work my thread wraps towards the hook eye. What I do want is I like to have that sitting reasonably parallel. I'll just trim it off. Okay. Gonna look to get 2 to 3 turns ideally behind the wings. And then I'm going to look to get roughly the same in front of the wings, like so. Okay, once I've got that first trap and wrap in, where I'm going through like so, and then push the fibres back and do it again. Snip off. Just quick tidy up, work with the tweezers. Just get those, I can catch more at the same time. Okay. I then like to go in with, first one's a single half edge, then a double half edge, and then a triple half edge. Just spin my thread so it's not twisting too heavily. Okay, leave a slight not put a tag on there, and there you have your Black Gnat. Hope you've enjoyed that.